Let's take a moment and say, like, hi, thank you guys for coming out and choosing this talk for your post-lunch nap. I appreciate it. My name is Adam. Everybody can say, hi, my name is, whatever your name is, so we can all be best friends. My name is Adam. Yes, perfect. There we go. Thanks. Now I know you guys. This will make it easier. So just a heads up, like the stage has got a little wobble to it. So if you see me grab this, it's half stage fright and half trying not to fall off. So we are here to talk about testing security solutions with the Atomic Red Team, which is an open source project that we started some time ago, and I'll get into more of that in just a moment. So who am I? My name's Adam. I already said that. My favorite things are security, beard, metal, that good stuff. So who I am is less important than what we're going to talk about, though. So what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about why testing is important, testing your security solutions, testing your security architecture, why it's important, some of the common roadblocks that people run into. We're going to talk about, kind of our proposal, our take on how we can make testing easier, how to make it more effective. And hopefully give everyone a few tools that they can take back and immediately start using in their organization, their day-to-day life. All right. So the current state of the security architecture. So your organization might look a little bit different, but a lot of you will resonate with some of these things. So you have things. You have security tools. You have your IDS, your IPS, your SIEM, AV. You have controls, you have hardening in place, you have technical constraints that keep your users from doing dumb things and keep your enemies out of your network. And then you have policies, which are mostly not followed, but you put them in place anyway. And you expect these things to do things, like prevent evil and put together your awesome incident response team, knock all the APT out of your network, and of course walk away from explosions without looking at them. But the truth is, many organizations have put a lot of money and time and sweat and blood into their security measures, but they don't actually know if they work. So let's talk about how we got here. So how did we build these systems, these architectures? Well, we built them because it was good security, right? We saw that we had a gap. We saw that we needed to go and put together tooling. We needed to put together different policies, whatever it took to get the bad guys out. Or compliance. Sometimes somebody else tells you have to do a thing or buy a thing or implement a thing. You don't always have a lot of faith in that thing. You hope that it works. And then expectations. So I'm sure a lot of people have had, managers come back from RSA and it's like, dude, I'm going to buy this really awesome thing that you've never heard of, right? So you end up with something because Gartner said it was a good idea to do it. So that's kind of how we put together our security architectures over time. And it's okay to feel proud of them, especially if you had parts in building them. So, you look at it and you're like, yeah, there's places we could do work, but we've got really great prevention and detection and visibility. We can find all the things, stop all the things, see all the things. We have great escalation paths, right? I mean, we feel like we have a pretty good thing put together here. But if you looked at your organization or the organizations you work with, you look at the security measures in place, and you did a gut check. How do you really feel? So you've got a lot of security. Are you confident in it? Sometimes it's really noisy. Sometimes it's really quiet. You're not exactly sure which one of those makes you feel better. You believe everything's working as it's intended to. You hope everything is working as it's intended to. But as we all know, hope is a feeling, not a strategy. So how can we know that it's working? How can we know that everything is working? You test it. That's easy, right? But how do you test it? How you test something is very important as well. So there's some common testing approaches, and I'm just going to, touch on a couple of them. So specifically, like when you're getting involved in like a POC, some new technology you want to test out, the vendor is very helpful, right? You say, okay, I'm going to buy this thing. And they're like, okay, yeah, you should definitely buy one of ours. And you're like, okay, well, I need to make sure that it works, and I need to make sure it works better than what I have already, or better than what your competitor does. And they're like, no problem. Run this thing. Run this thing with us, run the thing with them. So mostly they're going to give you something that's going to play to their strengths, obviously. but sometimes it's just outright rigged. So I had a situation in a past life where had a vendor do something very similar. They came in and they said, hey, we have this email solution. Give us your email address. We're going to send something through it. They sent it through. They're like, did you catch it with the thing you have today? Like, no, we didn't. Like, well, we did. We caught it. It's like, of course you did. You sent it. You crafted it. You sent it to me. So anyways, it's a problem. So you could also try in-house testing. So we're going to get together. We're going to build our own test plan, whether that's for something new or something established. And it's a great approach, but it's kind of hard to get started. You know, it's hard to figure out, like, what exactly should my test plan look like? How can I be objective with it? You know, which tests should I include? And it's hard to scope. Like, you don't always know, you know, when you're testing your security solutions, like, should I just go and download some tools? Like, Bloodhound's pretty cool. Should I do that? You know, do I need to just find all of this stuff on Twitter, whatever Casey's doing today? You know, and how do you track your progress? Like, if you're throwing darts at the wall, how do you make measurable progress with your testing? And one of the most common approaches for testing security solutions is pen tests. But there's problems with pen tests too. Most of the time it's a compliance checkbox. So a lot of times organizations will contract a pen test team. They come in once a year. They run Nessus. They give you a pretty report, and nothing of value is gained. So that doesn't necessarily help the organization. So you need something that's a little bit more, you know, substantive. But those teams can be expensive. So if you're saying I want to have more frequent testing, I want to have maybe a team that's going to be a little bit more legit, that's going to cost you. And sometimes that's hard from a business perspective to pitch. You know, you're not going to be able to get management to buy off on, like, we want to have a pen test team come in and do work for, you know, every other week or, you know, every other month. Scoping problems. A lot of organizations have problems where when they go to contract the pen tests, they don't really know what they want them to test. So they say, okay, just go get root or go get domain admin or, you know, just go hack things. And they will, you know, those people will go and do it, but that doesn't really give you like a very structured amount of things to test. Or there might be a very, very narrow scope where it's like, we have this contract, we're going to stand up this web app. You need to see if you can, you know, get into this thing. So they test the load balancer, they find no open ports except for the ones that are supposed to be open, and they say, okay, well, you're good. Neither one of those is going to be particularly useful for getting better most of the time. And as I mentioned, not all teams are created equal. So I've seen some really legit teams doing, you know, true adversary simulation. I've also seen teams with literally one tool. They just Mimikatz, they get things, they run more Mimikatz, they get more things, they just keep doing that over and over again. And that's a great tool. But that's, I mean, at the end of the day, all that gets you is better at finding Mimikatz, which useful, but that's not enough, you know, that's not the full scope that you want. And long round trip times. So, like I said, you're going to have these testers come in, once a year, maybe once a quarter if you're lucky. You know, they're going to give you some findings. Hopefully you can act on those. You can get better. If they come back and they retest, they're usually just retesting the exact same thing that they did before. So, yes, you found the one thing that they did. That's great. But now you have to wait until they come back. So, none of those is that's not really a great option for, you know, a nice iterative testing process. So what's the solution? Do we just build our own red team? That's actually a great idea. But there's problems with that too. Sometimes it's hard to build internally. Like, you have people that are very interested in testing and doing penetration tests, but they don't have the expertise. They don't really know where to get started. They haven't spent time in the trenches. And that's nothing wrong with that. You can definitely build from that. I know a lot of good people who've started from nothing and they've kind of turned themselves into excellent, you know, red teamers. But it's tough to get started, especially since a lot of those people are wearing a lot of hats, right? So it's like, this guy's not only like the guy who wants to be the red team, but he's also like the network administrator and, you know, the domain administrator, and he does a lot of other things. So it's kind of tough to get started there. So if you say, well, I'll just go and find somebody who's an excellent red teamer and I'll hire them and then they can come in and test all my stuff. That's also great, but they are very expensive and hard to find. So like good experienced red teamers, if you're not into remote work, you're going to pay a lot of money. And a lot of organizations, especially smaller ones, don't have that kind of budget, and they don't really even know how to hire for that position. They just don't have the resources inside to figure that out. And, if any of you guys have ever done any red teams, red team activity in your organizations, sometimes it's hard to maintain objectivity. You know what your strengths are. You know what your weaknesses are. And speaking as someone who's sat in that chair, hackers can be really lazy. So it's a matter of I know how to get the goal. I know how to get domain admin, and all I have to do is this thing here. So why would I go and try all this fancy tradecraft? Not saying that that's everybody. There's lots of excellent red teamers, that work internal to organizations that are really doing excellent adversary simulation. But we all tend to fall back to least passive, the path of least resistance. So, where does this bring us? So, outside of occasional poorly scoped pen tests, rigged POC testing, a lot of organizations just do not regularly test their solutions. So, we need something that is, we need ongoing iterative testing. So we need to be able to test something, see what we can do about it, test it again very, very quickly. We need objective measurements. We need some roadmap that helps us figure out where we're starting, where we're going, and how we check those boxes along the way. We need a low barrier for entry, because there's a lot of organizations that are very small, they have limited resources, but they want to do good things too. They want to test their solutions and make sure that they're working. This is the pause for dramatic effect. Boom! Atomic Red Team. So this is our project. This is the big reveal. The Atomic Red Team is an open source project that is comprised of discrete unit tests, which I'll cover a little bit more in a minute, and it's mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which some of you have probably heard of before. And I know what you're thinking. MITRE ATT&CK, so hot right now. So everybody's got a project, whether it's an off-the-shelf project or a open source project that is mapping to MITRE, and with very good reason. MITRE is doing excellent work. They have put together a great resource of adversary tactics and techniques that is very easy to kind of go through, understand, and operationalize. So it makes sense that there's a lot of teams that are trying to get on board and do stuff with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. There's other good projects besides ours, obviously, Meta from Chris Gates, Endgame has got their red team automation, APT simulator. Please don't stop with looking at Atomic Red Team stuff. There's plenty of other good projects that are also doing this good work. So for the two of you out there that have never heard of ATT&CK before, the MITRE ATT&CK framework kind of focuses on the post-exploit portion of the kill chain. So it's looking at things that happen after someone has already accessed your system, which sometimes prompts the question, well, why? Why do they focus on that? And the reason is that tracking, staying in front of the 0-day exploitation is really hard. To completely rip off and change a phrase that my dad uses a lot, there is software being pwned today that's never been pwned before. There are state actors out there that are using exploits in tradecraft that we just don't have documented anywhere. And that's hard to defend against. But once somebody lands on a system, the behaviors that they use, for persistence, for execution, for defense evasion, those are more consistent. Those are a little bit easier to track and keep up with. Though they do change over time and we have to stay on top of it, there's definitely value there, right? So as I mentioned, it's a curated treasure trove of adversary TTPs. It's mapping to known group behavior. So you can the fuzzy animal and APT, whatever number it is, those organizations are tracked. Their known tradecraft is put together in a really meaningful way that's easy to consume. And it's vendor agnostic. It's not something where they're trying to push any product. They're just trying to put together good information so everyone can grow together, which is awesome. So the Atomic Red Team, this is what it looks like. Basically what we've done is we've taken the attack matrices for each platform, and we've tried to mimic them in our repository in GitHub. So we have Windows, Mac, Linux. We have some artifacts. I'll kind of cover those in a little bit. And they kind of look like this. So basically you have your tactics at the top, You have the various techniques, and for each one of those techniques, what we've done is created an individual test or a series of tests. So why did we do this? So obviously, I've been up here talking about testing for a long time now. Testing is very important. We think it's crucial to understanding, what's going on in your network, understanding what capabilities you actually have. And we wanted to lower the barrier for entry. We wanted to make sure that teams of any size and, any security tooling could get involved in this, regardless of what they had today. The smaller targeted tests. So this is kind of taking a page out of the dev playbook. So the concept of unit tests being this is the smallest valid version of a thing. So what we do is we take a tactic from MITRE, we break it down to a very small one-line script when we can, and then we put that out there for you to use. And we try to add as many permutations, variations of that as we can. So what that does is it allows somebody to unlock one of the greatest technological abilities they have, copy and paste, and post that into a shell and run it. And then see what goes off, right? And then so once it goes off or it doesn't go off, then you have an action. You go find something and say, okay, I found this one thing. That's great. So, but if you didn't, there's a whole other set of things that you have to do. So the idea is just let's get testing on a much more rapid cycle. And we want to give back. We want to help people. We want to make security better for everybody, regardless of what size that team is, regardless of which products they use. We want everyone to level up because we work in an interesting industry where we actually have an enemy. Like we're not each other's enemies. We want everyone to beat the collective enemy. So that's kind of the why. Like how it came up with, the origins is kind of, it's the classic story of observe need and passionate people. So we had multiple people working inside the organization. So Mike, I put his Bookish Happiness project in here because it has a ridiculous auto-generated name. But it started off, that was kind of, one of the early iterations of let's just put tests out there and make them easy. Casey was working on it. We were talking to other people in the industry, and everyone was kind of like, yeah, we need to do testing better. So we're like, cool, let's do it. So how do you use the Atomic Red Team? So we're going to actually get into demo stuff now. So one thing this is my soapbox. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on Windows from a research and tooling perspective. A lot of projects focus on Windows systems, and justifiably, like they have the market share. But I'm a Mac and Linux guy, so these are going to be Mac and Linux tests. Because we need more people looking at those things. And in a lot of organizations, like they don't have visibility. Even like basic things they don't have. So this is T1155, which is in the execution tactic, and the technique is AppleScript. So AppleScript is kind of like, you can think of it kind of like a PowerShell for Apple, maybe not as full featured, but it can do a lot of really cool stuff. So it can talk to open programs, it can open programs, it can push keys. So if you think about it, it can do lots and lots of evil things on your systems. So this is kind of the example of This is kind of the example of how MITRE presents this information. So they give you the context, and then they give you some mitigation, some detection capabilities. So it's a really great way. If you haven't spent time in here, you really gotta get in here and start looking at some of these things. So this is what it looks like on the Atomic Red Team side. So we give you the context right back to MITRE. You can go and you can understand what it is. You can understand kind of like what the test is trying to achieve. And then you have a nice little one-line script. So in this case, we've just kind of taken a copy of the, and we've neutered it, but the Empire loader, for AppleScript. And so you can see right here in the first couple of little, words, OSAScript, which is the command line invocation for AppleScript, do shell script, which does exactly what you think it does. So it calls bash, and then now you're seeing some Python code that's going in there. So what this looks like from a telemetry perspective is OSAScript calling bash, calling Python, which is awesome. But that just to give you kind of an understanding of what you could do with something like this. This is just like the tip of the iceberg. So how do we implement this? Like what is a life cycle of using this tool, using this project? What does that look like? So So we start off with a test. So let's just say we take that AppleScript example. So we're going to test that. We're going to run that in our environment. We can just copy and paste it. Did you detect it? Did anything go off in your environment? Any one of your tools? If it did, great. Go back to the beginning. Maybe now it's time to test a permutation. So let's look at something else. Let's obfuscate it a little bit, right? Maybe we'll try a different way to invoke the same technique. If you didn't detect it, now you have an action. You have to go and look and see, do I have any raw telemetry for this? Is there any data in my stack? Like in my SIM, in my EDR product, in anything that saw this thing happen, even if I didn't get an alert? If not, maybe it's time to do some, get some more tooling. And there's a lot of great tooling out there that doesn't cost you anything. There's Sysmon, there's OS Query, that kind of covers pretty much all your platforms. And with a little bit of configuration, you can really get great visibility without having to pay anything, except for a little bit of your time. If you do have the telemetry, that's great. Let's go ahead and build a detection capability. So build something that will alert you the next time this thing happens. And you're going to want to make sure that when you're building that detection capability, that you're building resilient detection capabilities rather than fragile. And what I mean by that is, don't build something that will find the exact test you ran. You want to find something that's going to cast the widest possible net without crushing you with false positives. You want to make sure that you are looking for something. So if somebody starts putting a bunch of spaces or weird characters in between their in their syntax, like if you look at anything that Bohannon's written, where he likes to really mess up all of the PowerShell stuff, or most recently the command stuff, it's easy to obfuscate a lot of these commands. So add a little bit of flavor to it. See if you can still catch it. And so once you've built or tuned the existing detection capability, you test again. You'll notice everything goes back to testing. So let's look at another one. So this is 1141. This is the input prompt. This is in the credential access tactic, still using AppleScript. So using AppleScript, you can do cool stuff like pop up boxes that look exactly like system boxes. So any of you guys who've used like Responder on the Windows side, this is like a similar concept. You have some kind of prompt that pops up. It says, hey, we need your password because reasons. And the user's like, yep, here it is. Because that's what they do. And so, we've got some mitigations again and detection capabilities. And here is a nice little one-line script again from Atomic Red Team. Shout out to Fuzzy Knop because this is from his blog. So if we look at this is the command, right? And that's what it looks like at the bottom when you run it. So you run this in a, you've found your way onto a system, right? You've gotten a shell. You're unprivileged. You don't know much, but you know a user's on it. So you run this, and the user gets this nice software update box. And it says, hey, we need your password so that we can update the software. And the user's like, yep, I'm going to do that. And then that comes back to you. Now you can say, okay, a lot of people that run Macs, for simplicity's sake, maybe they have admin. So let's see if we can get root and then do all the evil stuff we've ever wanted to do. So you run this thing. Let's just say this is in your environment. You run this. You don't have anything that goes off. You're like, okay, I need to build something. So we have telemetry, and we have a couple of things that we can do with it. So we know the process is OSScript, and then there's a couple of keywords in the command line. So there's two things immediately that we can kind of latch onto. So we have our process, and we have some command line syntax entries. So you can say, okay, maybe I want to, maybe a detection would look like, process name is OSScript, and, the command line's got system preferences and password. And that's great. And that will catch this thing every single time. But you can also do the same thing with SH. So you can pass all the same parameters into it, and just say, hey, this is going to be an AppleScript type command. And you can get the same type of box. So the take-home of that particular thing is, remember your ABTs. Always be testing. You want to make sure that you're iterating through this stuff. You want to test, and you want to find another way to do it. You want to test that, and you want to keep going through this until you have caught as many iterations of this as you can possibly stand. But you don't want to spend all your time on it, right? There's plenty of boxes to check on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So, do what makes sense. Don't beat your head against the wall, when you could be building something else that's very simple. So, but keep testing. All right, so now you've got some tests, right? You've got some tests under your belt. You're like, okay, I need something that's going to be a little bit more robust. I want something that's going to look more like what an attacker would look like when they're in my network. So what we've done is we've created these chain reactions, and these are just reference scripts, just putting Lego blocks together. So we've taken a couple of tactics, a couple of techniques, we put them together in a way that simulates things that attackers would want to do. So you can do the same thing. You can go to MITRE, you can go through their find your platform of choice, go through your tactics and say, boom, 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 boom. I want all of these things. And just try to achieve the goals that you would want to achieve as an attacker. So now we have this chain reaction we're going to go over called Ranger. This is a Mac and Linux platform-aware script that we have out there, and it covers some of these boxes. So you've got your defense evasion, you're collecting a lot of interesting information, and preparing for exfiltration. You could easily throw some more in here. You could just go and take this and say, okay, well, maybe I also want to grab this information, this information, this information. And then maybe you want to just go ahead and add, like, I've got another box over here. I'm going to stand up, Netcat, and I'm going to actually exfiltrate this data. That's great. I mean, that's exactly what this thing is for, right? This is just a framework that you can use and build upon. So looking at Ranger, this is if you want to find it, you can go out there. And of course, we recommend you should absolutely understand what you're running in your environment. Don't run anything just because we told you to. Make sure you know what it is, what it does, and run it somewhere that's safe. That's the disclaimer. So this is just a little bit of the code, and please don't harass my code. It's not very good. I like pull requests. Please fix it if you can. But basically what it does is you can see there's nothing aside from probably the overcomplicated, like determining if it's a Mac or a Linux machine. Most of it's very simple stuff. Like you're using things like who am I and system preferences. System preferences, by the way, if you have Mac systems, if you're attacking Mac systems, system preferences is like one of the greatest things ever. Like it has so much data in it. It's got user data, it's got firewall data, it's got hardware data, software data. It's awesome. Like if you run this script, you will notice that that takes far longer than anything else in the test. But the information it's amazing. It's fantastic. So anyway, basically what we're doing is we're gathering all the information. We are staging that in some text files, and then we're taking those text files and we are shoving them into some encrypted and spliced little tar files. And the reason to do that is there's a lot of adversaries that will take those files and then they will try to send them out, something like DNS, some kind of known good allowable activity that goes outside of your network. So that's what we're staging here. And like I said, you can easily add your own system on there, open it up and say, okay, send me all the files. And now you can say, now you're not only testing endpoint stuff, you're testing your network. It's like anything on your network, see that you just pushed a bunch of files out. So this is not the end, this is just an example. And here's the telemetry. So you can see there's all this stuff on the right. There's a lot of normal looking activity. One of the hardest things to build detection capabilities for is recon, because it looks exactly like admin traffic most of the time. So you have to get a little bit more creative. You can't just say every time somebody runs who am I want to set off an alert, because that's going to kill you. But what you can say is anytime somebody runs who am I and they're not one of my system administrators, my network administrators, I absolutely want to know that, because like CSRs, they do not need to know what who am I is. But it's in your own environment. It's understanding what you can get away with and what you can't. Remember, you got to build resilient detections, not fragile ones. So what's the next level up? So let's talk about APT simulation, because APT is the big fun buzzword. Although, most organizations are not going to be facing APT. That's good. And for those of you that face APT every day, like, God bless you. Like, let me know how I can help. Like, that's scary stuff. But, you want to make sure that you are doing your due diligence, and you want to make sure, like, if you're in an industry where there are actors that have nation-state capabilities and they're coming after your cohorts, you have to at least use the tools that are at your disposal to defend yourselves. So evaluate your threat model. Know who you are. Like, don't go and pick some APT guy or APT organization that's, only targets South Korea if you don't have an Asian presence. Like, you should absolutely look at the tradecraft eventually, but that's not where you put your priority, right? So you find your friendly neighborhood APT, someone who is applicable to your organization, to your vertical, and then you can mimic the actor. So MITRE has this great treasure trove of information, and they're like, this APT actor, these are the things they do. So for an example, so this is APT32, also known as Ocean Lotus. There's a lot of different names for a lot of different groups. And that's a whole nother talk on its own. But you can track and see, like, this actor, these are the things they do once they get in. These are the tools they use. Maybe some of them are heavy on BSidesCharm. Some of them are heavy on Squibbly Do, which is a fun name. PowerShell, all that other good stuff. But you can go, and this is all available to you right now. You can say, okay, this group attacks my people. What do they do when they get in? So we took APT32 and we made an approximation that looked kind of like what they do. Now it's hard to like directly mimic nation state, but you can get really close, right? So we have in this case there's just a couple of tactics and techniques that kind of stand out. They use scheduled tasks for for persistence. They're using Squibbly Do, because I want to say that again, to bypass application whitelisting, execute their code, and do it in a very stealthy way. In this case, we're not trying to like wreck you. So you'll see things like, we'll set a scheduled task and we'll take it away. The real thing is, do you see it, right? Are you catching this stuff? And then there's some files and stuff that get dropped and some time stomping that occurs, and it's really fun. It's a fun one. You should download this and you should run it somewhere and see like what your SOC does. It'll be fun. So, a note on simulating APT. So Nick Carr, this is like, it's a great little quote here. Someone that actually tracks APTs, it says, I don't know if it's possible to authentically simulate the best APT groups. You can get the same victims and data, but they have nation state funding to innovate. You can get as close as yesterday, which is great. I mean, that's true. It's totally true. They have way more money. They have super smart minds. But I wouldn't let tweets like this one, or this obviously fake one that I made up, discourage you. Because if you can get as close to yesterday to nation state, like, you are an apex defender. Like, that is, you're really rocking out. Like, if you can position yourself to protect your organization from nation state actors using recent data, then you're doing a great job, and you should continue doing that great job, right? You should continue to innovate. Like, just realize, just like when I said never stop testing, never stop innovating, never stop, keeping up with this data. Always check in, see what's the new tradecraft that's available. So what's next for Atomic Red Team? So you might have noticed on that one slide that there's some boxes unchecked. there's definitely tactics and techniques. Some of them don't really lend themselves well to one line tests, and that's okay. We try to use the tools that are available in the systems more than bringing in outside tooling if we can help it. But sometimes we're going to have to bring that stuff in. So we're evaluating some of those cases. We're also looking at one of the big things that we've gotten from the community is interest in being able to machine consume the test for Atomic Red Team. So basically, somebody else wants to host a framework and they want to just use us like a repository of modules, which is great. It's a great use case. We would love to be that repository. So we are YAMLizing all of our tests. So that's one of the big things that's coming up, and we expect to add some of our own automation. But definitely, we will always have this nice, easy, low barrier for entry method we have today. Also, the great Lee Holmes has reached out, and he's done some PowerShell automation stuff for us as well, kind of almost like an invoke Atomic. So that's pretty exciting. But really, this is a great transition. We need more people, right? We built this thing for the community, and we've had some really great community feedback. But we we need you, right? we need you to contribute. We want more people to build tests and stuff. And I'll tell you a little story. I was interviewing for a job and talking to this really smart guy who I respected, and he said, what open source stuff are you playing with? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm playing with this tool and I'm playing with this tool, and like I kind of nerded out for a minute. He's like, yeah, that's great. He said, which ones are you contributing to? I was like, well, I've been meaning to, and like I haven't gotten around to it, and like, I don't really know GitHub that well. And he said, bummer. Do you know how terrible the word bummer is when you're in an interview? Like, that's like the worst thing that you can hear. Like that's, and it was one of those things. I was like, man, it's like a wake up call. Cause I'd wanted to, and I always made a point to do it, but I had never actually put any time in on it. And it was kind of, like I said, that was my wake up call. So, I will say that if you've ever thought about contributing to open source, if you're not doing it already, this is a super easy way to get involved. It takes maybe 10, 15 minutes to research a box in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Go and find some POC code, neuter it a little bit so it's not, ransomwaring somebody's environment. And then, doing a pull request. And we can certainly help you. Like, if you say, like, I really want to contribute and I have this data and I don't know how to get it in there, like, just please, like, reach out to us because we would really love to help you with that. And on that note, if you want to reach out to us on, if you want to reach out to us, you want to talk to us about anything at all, the project, how you can help. If you think it's terrible and you have another idea, that's great too. You can hit me or Casey, Mike up on Twitter. And then we have a great repository of resources at atomicredteam.com. So as we built this project, we built a lot of blogs, a lot of like webinars, all kinds of stuff. I actually have another webinar coming up Friday where we'll be talking about Mac and Linux stuff. That's right. All right. So that's it. I mean, that's basically that's what we got. Any questions? I think we have a couple minutes. Anybody have any questions? What's up? Yeah, so the question was, are there any native dependencies? Yeah, it's just most of these tests, all they require is a shell script. We try to stay away from having, a lot of external tools for that reason. You're gonna run into stuff like there's a lot of actors that like BSidesCharm because BSidesCharm is awesome. But of course that's gonna require that you download it. And in those cases, we try to make sure that we highlight those dependencies so that you don't run into a problem where you're like, this test doesn't work and these guys are terrible. What else? Well, I have a ton of stickers. So like, my friend Kelly sent these stickers like overnight, so you guys have to take them. So please see me after. I'll be around today, so like come ask any questions you have. I'd love to talk to you guys. Thank you guys for coming. This is awesome.